Yeah, I gotta talk about this one. So, last year, around the end of July to early August of 2019, I was anticipating the next year to be a big one for Super Mario. Late July, I make a video emphasizing how Paper Mario's chances of revival grew, looking at Nintendo's behavior on the recent releases and time gaps between each Paper Mario game, which is an average of 4 years. August, I make a long detailed wish list and theory crafter on what Super Mario Odyssey 2 could be, and what ideas and designs I thought of with its worlds, various mechanics, and more. Into September, I boiled the general idea into its own video, speculating how 2020 could be a big year for Mario, and predicted 3 potential game announcements, 2 of which being the games I made videos about, A New Paper Mario and Super Mario Odyssey 2. Fast forward to yesterday, then suddenly, out of nowhere, I'm greeted on the 30th of March to a bunch of tweets about rumors from sources that Nintendo is planning a collection of multiple remasters of a majority of mainline Mario games for Super Mario's 35th anniversary. This isn't from one source either. VGC, Gamatsu, Eurogamer, like a bunch of sources from all over are claiming these remasters are legit, in the works, and it seems to largely cover 3D Marios in particular. Some say it's confirmed to have Super Mario Galaxy and a Super Mario 3D World Deluxe, while others claim Super Mario Sunshine is also one of them. The rumor emphasizes it's something akin to Super Mario All-Stars, but for 3D Mario. A Super Mario All-Stars 2, if you will. Another source a while back claimed that this year would also be massive for remakes and remasters, and if the Xenoblade Chronicles DE, Final Fantasy VII, Nier, and SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated remakes are anything to go off of, this would add to that claim as well. Pray Kid Icarus gets some love at all within the next decade. To add to this, these rumors also add the claim that a proper new Paper Mario is coming this year still. So, a bunch of 3D Marios being remade and a new Paper Mario. That's 1 out of 3 predictions I apparently got for the longest time now, and while no Odyssey 2 so far, this would allegedly be just as hype and amazing, if not more, due to several factors. 3D Mario and Paper Mario are my favorite subseries of the Mario franchise ever, discounting Mario and Luigi. This rumor is basically tailored to my wants and desires, but the part of me, the pessimism in me, is telling me to withdraw and reiterate that mantra. Don't do that. Don't give me hope. All of this sounds extremely good to be true. Like, God knows how long millions upon millions of Mario fans have been begging for a full HD console remaster or remake of any 3D Mario game, whether it be 64, Sunshine, Galaxy, Galaxy 2, or even 3D World. But there are a couple factors to consider with this rumor that's carried a lot of weight over the course of the day. The obvious issue being Corona Mountain from Super Mario Sunshine. And when I say the name of the volcano from Super Mario Sunshine, I'm talking about the virus that sort of made living at home a hell. Laugh at my funny joke! Nah, but serious note, this pandemic, it froze thousands of corporations, events, businesses, and studios all over the world. It's essentially put the world on pause in several ways, and game development is among them. We have no clue how much this virus is going to affect Nintendo of Japan, or for how long, and it's unlikely they'll ever spill most of the details. We could only surmise that most games planned and developed like a year plus or 2 in advance would be affected either very little or not at all, as we saw in the Nintendo Direct Mini. The fact we haven't gotten a general Direct for half a year with only single game ones throughout between Animal Crossing, Smash, and Pokemon, along with the fact that Direct we did get was a mini, was likely because of the virus. It focused on nothing but games coming out for this year within a couple months of each other. So that begs the question of what games started development or were midway through were affected by the virus. Assuming this 3D Mario Anniversary Collection was planned a little after Odyssey, there's a good chance it wasn't, at least by much. Unfortunately, we can't say for certain. Secondly, this is something that seems pretty anti-Miyamoto idealistically. Paper Mario is one thing. I've explained and emphasized how Miyamoto isn't the sole root cause of Paper Mario's downward spiral after Super Paper Mario. The actual development team and head producers and directors and such behind Sticker Star and Color Splash played a much bigger role. But Miyamoto did express in an interview several years ago that he had zero interest in remastering past 3D Marios, despite both how a bunch of people would have loved a remaster remaster or remake of any 3D Mario, and how much easy-ass money Nintendo would have made. However, a counterpoint to that I feel diminishes my point is Miyamoto has taken a backseat on a lot of recent Nintendo projects lately. A lot more new, creative, and skilled talents have been taking the reins with Nintendo games lately. Yoshiaki Koizumi with Super Mario Odyssey, Link's Awakening, the one Zelda game where Koizumi wanted it to be more than just a remake of The Link to the Past, which recently just got another remake on Switch. There's also the fact Miyamoto has been heavily against the idea of its IPs getting a movie several years ago, but he turned around and is open to the idea of expanding Nintendo's IP's horizons and just Nintendo's brand. Between the Mario movie co-developed with Illumination, I'm gonna have to touch on that at some point too, actually, but also in the Super Nintendo World and Nintendo expanding the theme parks. Thirdly, there's also the sheer fact this rumor is claiming at least 2 to 3 Mario remasters/ports at once, which is something a little tricky to wrap my head around. A Mario sequel reusing the same engine and assets is one thing, but if it has 64, Sunshine, Galaxy, and 3D World with graphics up to standard, then that feels like a lot. I'm not sure how Nintendo has enough resources to pull 3 remade Mario games in one. 3D World's likely to be a heavier one-to-one port, most likely requiring little struggle. Galaxy could even be just an upscaled rip from the Wii, as that game is surprisingly really beautiful even to this day. But not only do I feel they're not going to do that, Sunshine, and especially 64, would have to use something akin to Odyssey's graphics engine or something. Then extra changes, physics touch-ups across each 3 games that play and feel differently in several ways, and other stuff to maybe enhance the experience along with it. I may sound a little hypocritical given my thoughts on a potential Odyssey 2, because why I felt that could happen is similar to this. Plus, there is a good chance they just copied Mario Odyssey's graphics and physics engine, altered it 3 times, and just reapplied near every single thing about 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy in 3 different projects. It's totally possible, and maybe I'm just overthinking it. But we're talking 3 Mario games at once. They are Mario games that were complete, and they wouldn't really have to change a whole lot across all of them except maybe Sunshine, but 3 quote-unquote remastered Mario games, remade to fit the Switch's gameplay and controls as opposed to the Wii in Galaxy's case, plus a 3D World Deluxe port of some kind, personally feels like a lot. It feels like something to where it might not be a simple upscaling and call it a day either. They would have to alter the control schemes a bit across each game and update the graphics to at least be almost as appealing as Odyssey if they're not using the same graphics. Fourthly, there's also the base fact, it's a rumor. You gotta take this stuff with a grain of salt. Rumors can still be wrong and invalid no matter how many claim it's true. It's happened before. April Fool's Day's tomorrow. This could totally be a collaborative April Fool's joke and lead people up for disaster and inevitable disappointment. It blew up a lot yesterday. You know that's a lot of hype and high expectations being built right there. We don't even know how many other mainline games they mean, or if it's completely different mainline games as well. We don't know if Galaxy 2 is among that list, or going to be a DLC case like Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World, if the new Super Mario Bros. Series is being considered, or some other weird, backwards decision of some kind. The mainline Mario games are both 2D and 3D, and between the claims and what's been re-released, you'd have to assume it's the 3D games, since there's little point in remastering the 2D ones, when Mario All-Stars, the various re-releases across multiple platforms and services of the Super Mario Bros. Trilogy and Super Mario World, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and Super Mario Maker 1 and 2 exist. Not to mention how similar the new Super Mario Bros. Games are across almost every game. Unless they're 2D hand-drawn like Wario Land Shake It, I doubt it's pointing anywhere to the 2D games. However, between the virus, the development time, how much Miyamoto's played a role in this or not, the fact this feels like an incredibly amazing potential thing that feels too good to be true, and the fact that this is just a rumor, which anyone can make, especially tying to Paper Mario, leaves me to refrain from jumping the gun. On the flip side, this is something I seriously want very bad and would be just as, if not better, than getting an Odyssey 2. 1, this wouldn't impede the possibility of an Odyssey 2. It could very well still happen, like another year or 2 down the line, after this supposed rumor comes to fruition. Odyssey 2 could still have a bunch of those crazy worlds, new captures, setups, and whatnot. 2, this potential quote-unquote remaster collection would allow us to basically have the best of 3D Mario all on the Switch, an extremely prolific source of exposure. We've no idea at the moment if Galaxy 2 would fall in this collection or not, assuming if true, but getting Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy, and Super Mario 3D World all on Nintendo's fastest selling portable console to date with over 52 million sales, halfway to surpassing the Wii's total sales after only 3 years, sharing the same console as the best selling 3D Mario to date being Super Mario Odyssey. It paints the picture itself of how easy and successful of a profit this would create financially, as a franchise, and how big of a push this would be for the 3D Mario subseries. Mario is the biggest video game franchise of all time. Some of his most well-received, most beloved adventures come straight from the 3D games. People adore 3D Mario, especially Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Galaxy. This could likely sell stupidly crazy. It might even surpass Odyssey's sales, given the collection would theoretically harbor games spanning multiple generations, attracting more of those older fans into picking up the Switch, just to have all these old Mario games and even more, all in amazing HD with different settings, atmospheres, designs, and goals. Not only this, but it would expose new generations, the new fledgling gamers of today that have or want to switch to some of what makes Mario one of the biggest platformers of all time, especially in 3D. 3, this may not be as unrealistic as I could feel it be. A certain Bandicoot by the name of Crash had a remaster trilogy of his own a while ago, and if this Super Mario 35th Anniversary Collection was conceptualized and started a little time after Odyssey, it seems the development span leading up to this holiday wouldn't be hard to believe. The Crash Insane trilogy kept getting teased in the way that people yearned for Crash to come back, and the possibility was always on the table. This would go on between 2013 and 2014, and then ways of revitalizing Crash were thought of, only for the remake to be teased E3 of 2016, and for the game to release June 30th, 2017. Assuming development truly started somewhere around 2014, then the Crash trilogy took only 3+ years to make a reality. Worst case scenario, 4 years. Granted, the indications of development heavily point to 2014. Same for Spyro the Dragon. Talks of a Spyro comeback circulated around 2014, but we didn't get any teases until 3 years later, with the game releasing September of 2018. While less concrete, it's very similar to how long it took the Crash trilogy to be made, presumably, but there could always be the chance this Mario collection started development before Odyssey finished, for all we know. We literally do not know. 4, we don't know our holiday title. The only other game that we know very little about, but is decently on its way, is Breath of the Wild 2. But given the teaser statement of now in development, and we haven't heard a thing about it since last E3, there's a decent chance Breath of the Wild 2 could be a ways off. Then again, they could co-release that alongside a Mario Remaster collection for the holiday, unless one of the two received a delay of some sort. There's also the virus that could likely be accounted for regarding Zelda, so it's tough to say. Logically, they could end the year with Zelda, if nothing hindered the development. But if this rumor leans towards truth, then the Mario collection would make a lot of sense as well. So there's reason to believe it's a big hoax, but there's reason to believe it holds some validity to it. But my question is, assuming these are a thing, are these Mario remasters really gonna be remasters or remakes? You have to remember these games could be put on Switch, which houses a slightly different control scheme than the GameCube controller, particularly the sensitive shoulder triggers, and especially different from the Wii. Granted, you can use the GameCube controllers on the Switch, but I'm struggling to think there will be a 95% one-to-one remasters without some extra liberties taken and criticisms addressed. We also don't know if these will be remakes/remasters to where they'll want to replicate the original experience as much as possible, or if they're willing to change some aspects about each game and improve the experience by correcting some problems these games had. Between the different control scheme Galaxy houses, the amount of extra gripes and dents they can iron out in Sunshine, and the fact that 64's more slippery controls, and especially its dated graphics, aren't nearly as refined as its successors, I personally feel like it's going to be more than a simple remaster. If they were to touch up the graphics, the controls, the physics, etc., they'd essentially be remaking them as opposed to remastering, much like Grezzo's very various Zelda remakes, Xenoblade DE and SpongeBob BFB be rehydrated. I can't imagine 64 being brought back unless it was remade under Odyssey's engine with most of the jumping distance and speed intact, because having Mario's big and long jumps was one of the most fun aspects about controlling Mario in 64. Would they also bother altering its progression structure as well? Like, I could see them pondering the idea of Odyssey's progression structure to where you don't get kicked out of a level to improve the explorative pacing and continue exploring the world more seamlessly. However, they'd be shaving 64's total playtime dramatically. Super Mario 64 is not a long game at all. You can 100% the entire game in like 5 or 6 hours. Cutting out being pulled back to the castle only to jump back in would make the game be much shorter than it is, so it would be a double-edged sword. There's also the question of whether this would have any connection to the 64 DS remake or not as well. Would Luigi, Wario, and Yoshi be added in a sort of side mode where it's akin to 64 DS? Would there be extra minigames and such like the extra content the DS version had? Because Super Mario 64 DS's main problem was largely its control scheme being mapped to a D-pad. I feel like it's likely going to replicate the original 64, but it is something to consider. Outside of slight physics touch-ups and graphics, however, there isn't much they could really change about 64. Same for Galaxy. Galaxy hardly has many issues for the structure it takes and the worlds it has and how they're designed. Like, Galaxy seems to have the least number of flaws out of every 3D Mario, and could likely be one of the games that they can withstand being a one-to-one port with almost no changes at all. The only hurdle they'd really come across would be replicating the Wii's motion controls and IR sensor for pointing at the screen. The Switch's Joy-Con seems shoddy and inconsistent with certain games, and how the pointer in particular isn't as good as the Wii remotes, not to mention Joy-Con drift still being a prevalent issue with imprecise, uncontrolled platforming, but there could be a way to translate Galaxy's controls and pointer to a Pro Controller / GameCube controller. Given there are 2 control sticks and one could operate the cursor while the shoulder buttons could operate the camera, it could pretty much be close to how Odyssey's control scheme is, to be honest. 3D World would probably be the easiest port and make legitimately one-to-one with like nothing new at all, since that's really the only game they could just port into the collection and not worry about a thing. Maybe throw in Daisy or something, I don't know. But they could do what they did with New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe and just not add anything outside of one extra character or whatever. Controls would be the same, graphics could be the same as well, levels, design, like everything. But the biggest issue they come across with fixing these games' issues is just Super Mario Sunshine. I adore Sunshine, but it's by far the most problematic of the 3D Marios. Between the blue coins, how they're scattered, restrictive, and cryptic they are to locate, how you can't get them all once you head into a world and there are multiple blue coins locked off behind certain episodes, how much more linear Sunshine is compared to 64 with star/shine accessibility, how certain levels and challenges have wonkier physics compared to the rest of the game, or are structured in ways to where it's a pain in the ass to complete, like the lily pad level you need Yoshi to access, or even the Watermelon Festival. What they could probably do is adopt Odyssey's moon objectives and apply them to the blue coins, since the two are easily comparable in terms of placement, difficulty, and sometimes cryptic nature. Largely just make spots you ground pound for blue coins glow, like the moons. Makes discovering them significantly less of a hassle, lay out some more hints between signs or NPCs as well, and collecting the blue coins is much less tedious and more satisfying that way. I would also not make Yoshi drown in water either. He's never done that before, nor has he done that in later entries, and constantly avoiding water for certain tasks to access certain levels was also monotonous and a pain to do. Wonky level changes like the pachinko machine, oh god. Personally, the pachinko level gets a lot more hate than it deserves. It's wonky, sure, but given you're essentially a pinball of sorts and the physics themselves aren't even that different or hard to learn, I would not mind if they kept it, but honestly, I'm sorry. Most people just suck at the pachinko level, but they would likely not give it its wonky feel and just give it normal controls like the rest of the game. Sandbird's wonky physics, however, are physics they can definitely omit for sure. They could also make the watermelons in Gelato Beach less sensitive to push to make moving it less stressful. I'd also personally allow at least a couple more shines, maybe not all of them, to be accessed out of order like 64. There's maybe like 1 or 2 shines you could get out of order in the game unless you access later worlds via glitches, which will likely not be present in these theoretical remasters. I'd also do something about that boat. The little brown boat you steer. I don't know what specifically, but the brown boat you steer with FLUDD is also decently irritating that something physics related should probably be altered. That's something I could stand and say the boat does kinda suck. I also wonder if they would change the cutscenes at all too. Would they keep them as is sound wise, add new voice acting, same for Mario 64 since Peach spoke, or just do what Odyssey does with adding gibberish with some English? I'm not gonna lie, I'd love to see the current voice actors and actresses take a stab at voice acting some Mario games a little more than what they do. Bowser's voice since Galaxy has been perfect for him. Peach and Bowser Jr. were fine too, but I'd love to see these great characters talk more, maybe even in the Galaxy remaster. That might just be me though. There's plenty they can do to make Sunshine a much more fun game to go through than its predecessor, slightly the same for 64 and Galaxy. I'd also wonder if, like Xenoblade, the games will get remastered soundtracks at all. Galaxy and 3D World, they can get away with keeping the original OST. Sunshine, they could probably benefit from an updated soundtrack. 64 likely more so, given the sound design of the N64. That, and they did remix Inside the Castle Walls in Mario Odyssey, but all of this is under the assumption that the remasters are remakes with extra changes and modifications to improve the gameplay experience, when it can very well just be largely one-to-one remasters with minimal really done to alter the original game's experiences. Depends on what their angle is going with this. I didn't even talk about Paper Mario for most of this discussion either, and Paper Mario is a part of this rumor, which is also similar to another rumor a while ago regarding something Metroid related, like a 2D Metroid, but there were also rumors of a Paper Mario on the way, structured much more like 64 and Thousand Year Door. I think this was around February or like late January, I forget when specifically. Much like how I've been anticipating the next Paper Mario to take a specific form, how I've anticipated its 4-year gap would stay true by releasing 2020, many others are claiming the same as well. But I'm more optimistic on 3D Mario getting this kind of treatment or just being good, whereas I'm more hesitant on Paper Mario than a 3D Mario remaster collection. I need to see it to believe it. Color Splash's reveal is over 4 years old. Intelligent Systems and Nintendo have been doing a much better job gauging what their fans want for their franchises. There's no way in hell they missed the massive slew of backslash Color Splash got from reveal to release, or how much people yearned for a Thousand Year Door remaster, let alone the next Paper Mario game to play like one. Logic would naturally dictate that things could look up for Paper Mario and its series, but it's Nintendo. It's Intelligent Systems. For all we know, they couldn't have just not listened to 95% of the criticism and immediately worked on the next Paper Mario game without hesitation, like Color Splash after Sticker Star. I'm feeling more hopeful for Paper Mario. My mind hasn't changed much since my channel was terminated, but I can hardly add anything else to this entire Paper Mario ordeal than I already have stated in the past. I'm pulling a 3-strike system, they screwed up twice, one more, I'm out for good presumably. They have had a lot of ample time to check and see what Paper Mario games should likely be made, what should be done for consumers and fans to be appeased, and for Paper Mario to thrive as the currently sole surviving quote-unquote Mario RPG at the moment. We've said what we've wanted, we want them to listen, they've been listening with a bunch of other games, and what people want for them like Mario Maker 2 and Luigi's Mansion 3. We've emphasized how story, characters, plot, writing, charm, and turn-based true RPG gameplay are the building blocks of what makes Paper Mario amazing. You don't have to surpass Thousand Year Door, but I at least want a Paper Mario within the same ballpark. A Paper Mario that I could say is as good as the first two, maybe even Super as well. I expect a Paper Mario announcement of some kind within this year, but I would seriously hope they listened and give us a proper Paper Mario. I'm withholding many heavy emotions and expectations until I actually see what they've done with Paper Mario 6. That said, it's a slippery slope we're riding on between Paper Mario and 3D Marios being remade. Even just picturing classic 3D Marios in 1080p, 60 frames per second on my Switch is so freaking delicious. Imagine replaying 64 with Odyssey's graphics, dire docks looking similar to the Lake Kingdom's beauty, with a remix, or traversing Bowser's levels to revamped Bowser's Road music, or Sunshine, beautifully scenic secret levels, amazing water graphics, beautiful sunset Sirena Beach. Toadsworth can make a comeback on consoles in nice HD after so long, so that'd be dope. Or Galaxy, an amazing HD space graphics like Lake Kingdoms and Dark Side Sky, good at Galaxy, Beach Bowl Galaxy, Melty Molten Galaxy, and a bunch of others reimagined in HD. The Dolphin emulator is fantastic, and Sunshine and Galaxy look stellar in upscaled definition, but true HD, like how Odyssey looks for all three of these games, would be a dream come true. I really want this rumor to be true so bad. But again, several unknowns about it along with a bunch of hypotheticals and what ifs. It can totally be fake, but man would it be sick if it ended up being true. Like Paper Mario, I'll believe it when I see it and then get even more crazy and hype. Either way, there's reason to suspect 2020 for Mario could still be huge with 3D Mario and Paper Mario. What do you feel? Are we getting a Paper Mario this year? You think it'll be anything like the first two, or will it disappoint or even shock us? What about these 3D Mario remaster rumors? Are they real? Do they sound ridiculous and too good to be true to believe? Let me know down below. Even if they end up being false, even considering these possibilities and ideas has been very fun. Men can dream. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more videos on Mario, Paper Mario, and more Nintendo content between discussions, let's plays, and more. Stay super. It's good to be back.